Everybody, and welcome along to another one of these sessions with me, Ben Calder, where I'm here for the BTPA, even the Bowen Therapy Professional Association, speaking to some of our key characters within the Bowen world at the moment. And I'm really grateful to have the directors and lead tutors of the College of Bowen Studies with me, Joe Wortley and Colin Murray. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Morning, Ben.
Morning, thank you.
Morning. Now, Joe, I know you're a little nervous, so we're going to come on to you in just a minute. But so we can kick into all of this stuff here, what I'd really like to do is just for the public who may not have come across your work before, some of our upcoming students, and maybe some of the other people within the Bowen world who don't know you guys so well, I'd like just to have you give a little introduction about who you are, how you got to where you are today, and what got you involved in physical therapy. So, Colin, if maybe we start with you there.
Yeah, of course, not a problem. Thanks, Ben. My Bowen journey started in 2009. I had actually never heard of the Bowen Technique before. I'd come from a management background. I'd always ran my own companies. And I had set up and was running a multidisciplinary clinic with my brother, who's an osteopath. And I had studied other therapies. I'd done Reiki, reflexology, sports massage. But I wanted to do something a little more remedial. So I looked at physiotherapy, which was a full-time 4-year degree, and that wasn't possible. And osteopathy was at a 5.5-year part-time degree, and would have involved me moving or travelling to England every fortnight for 5.5 years, which I didn't fancy. And I read about an article about Bowen. I can't remember if it was an FHT magazine, but I read an article in a magazine, and I thought, that sounds kind of too good to be true. The results that were getting talked about and the fact that you could train in less than a year. So I phoned up. It was actually Paula. Paula Essen was my teacher. The number took me straight through to her clinic just outside Durham. And she said, well, we don't have any training in Scotland this year or next year. She said, but you can come down to England and train. I was like, yeah, cool. It just seemed to resonate. I'd never had a treatment. Didn't know anything about it other than this one article, but I signed up there and then. I was like, right, I'm off to train in Bowen, and people were like, what is that? I've got no idea. And it just went from there. I qualified in 2010, and then it took over my practice. I haven't done reflexology, I haven't done a lot of massage now since then.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's pretty impressive as well, the fact that you hadn't even had a treatment at that point and just went both feet in.
Yeah. That's kind of how that just, something just resonates and feels right. So that's what I did. Went off down, trained down in Durham with Paula. And then because there hadn't been any teachers in Scotland, and I say this to my students now, I say, when you become a practitioner, write yourself a business plan and decide what it is you want to do. And one of the things I put in my business plan in 2010 was to become a teacher. And part of that, I then went on as many CPD workshops as possible. I went and trained with as many different teachers as possible, and I still do to this day. And when you're sitting there, I would think, well, how would I teach that? What else would I want? What would I want the teacher to give me, etc. So I always approached it from that point of view. And then in 2016, Paula approached me and asked if I wanted to join the teaching team. So I was like, oh, wow, excellent. And it kind of just snowballed from there. Joe joined at the same time. And the way things have worked out, we now run the college, and we're taking it in some exciting new directions. So
awesome, beautiful.
That's my brief history.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're also encouraging the students that you're working with now to look ahead about that idea of teaching and to becoming that legacy that Bowen Technique is going to need if we're going to keep this rolling through all the years. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I see my role as a teacher, and I say this to my students, is I want them to surpass me. And I think as our teaching techniques get better, and especially now with the collaboration, bringing in other teachers from other areas, it's like they have that opportunity now to learn more of the theory, more of the background. And we're bringing a lot of students in that are already training or already trained as therapists in other fields. And yeah, it's like
It's always the hope, isn't it? Brilliant. Thanks, Colin. And Joe, how about for you? Tell us a little bit about your history, how you got to where you are today.
So my background, pre-Bowen, I was a quality systems engineer in a large automotive company. I'd also done some marketing, some imports, exports, things like that. So very sort of business orientated. And actually I had no idea at the time that whole quality systems engineering role would come into play now as a Bowen tutor, rewriting all of the theory and procedures and all of that kind of stuff. So actually those old skills have come in really, really handy, and certainly in the most recent years. So yeah, I didn't have any background in therapies whatsoever. I came across Bowen because at the time I had a young child. I had a 2-year-old, and I'd been wearing a pair of heels and just bent down to pick him up, and I'd done it all wrong, back locked up, which it had never ever done before, and I literally couldn't move. And my mother-in-law had been a case study for McTimney chiropractor Diane Bradshaw, who sadly is no longer with us anymore. But she was a case study for Diane when she first started learning Bowen. And Bowen was fairly new to the country. And so my mother-in-law was like, oh, you need to try this. It's really, really good. So I tried Bowen. And I remember it was £27 at the time for a session, which was really expensive when you had a new baby, you just got married, you just bought a house. And it was like, oh, my God. And this chap says, right, well, I need to see you again next week. And I was like, oh, my God, I can't afford that. But literally the next day, my back was about 50% better. And the day after that, I woke up and it was like I'd never had backache. And I was like, okay, I need to find out more about this. This is like really like blew my mind completely. So I kind of looked into it a little bit. There wasn't an awful lot of information out there about it at the time. This is about kind of sort of 2001, something around that time. And then I found a course that was running. So I learned with Joy West, who was a tutor at the time. She was a fabulous tutor, retired now, unfortunately, but amazing lady. And she taught me Bowen. I was really just trying to find out more about it. Did my first set of case studies, and I thought, right, I'm going to give this a good run for its money. I did rugby players, football players, people that I knew had some real issues, spinal problems, back problems. And I remember this rugby player friend of ours laughed his head off while I was doing this. He said, I can't believe you've been conned into doing this. He said, this isn't going to do anything. And I was doing these little tiny moves on this great big strapping bloke, and he was laughing at me. And I just thought, oh, what am I doing? And like literally the next week he came in and was like, oh my God, I have never been able to move like this before. And the football player was saying the same thing. And like all these case studies were coming in going, this is amazing. Like, this is really, really cool. So I ended up doing the whole thing and just got really addicted to it. And then went on to have 2 more children while I was running my Bowen practice as well. So the nice thing about Bowen is that, you know, because you're self-employed, you can work your clients around your children, school pickups, things like that. So I actually managed to raise 3 boys over the whole period of my Bowen career. They're all now grown up, so they're 18, 20 and 22. And I am still their first port of call for them and all of their mates if anyone's got any aches or pains or they've injured themselves doing something. You know, they all get sent to me. So it's really, really lovely to be able to do that for your family.
Yeah, amazing, Joe. And, you know, hats off and full respect to you. I'm the youngest of 3 boys, and, you know, my mum almost raised us single-handedly there as well. So full respect for that's not an easy task for any person to deal with. So a lot of respect for you there. And you also spent a lot of time working and kind of doing children's clinics around Bowen as well. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I started teaching, I was the Children's Clinics Coordinator for BTPA. And that was really, really interesting. That actually led on to the study on fascia Bowen on dyspraxic children, because Howard Plummer was saying to me, well, I've noticed that children who are having fascia Bowen, who are dyspraxic, tend to be behaving in certain ways. This happening across the country, and I was talking to different people that were running different clinics across the country, and it was. And these children were beginning to experiment more with the textures of food, and so they were eating more. They were starting to apparently absorb more nutrients from their food, and they were starting to really sort of thrive and flourish and kind of literally grow before your eyes. So there was a whole kind of study that was carried out on fascia Bowen, and that was absolutely incredible. And I have gone on to do lots of work with autistic children with cerebral palsy, dyspraxia, ADHD, and the results in children are absolutely phenomenal. Working on babies with colic, constipation, a whole array of things, sleep issues. Oh my goodness, seriously, you treat a baby with sleep issues, you'll have the whole NCT group coming in to see you. There was one week I had 16 babies in, one after the other. It was crazy, because I helped one lady with her sleep issues with a baby. So yeah, I mean, it's really, really rewarding. Those messages between the body and the brain seem to be a lot faster in children and babies. So quite often you'll see results during the session. So yeah, it's really rewarding, really, really cool. And, you get lots of hugs and stuff like that from these children who, just absolutely love coming for a treatment.
Beautiful. I love that. And it just shows the astounding power and diversity of Bowen to be able to work on, I've always liked the fact that when babies and animals are responding really well to work, they're not so kind of connected into the placebo-esque idea that maybe it's just having the attention and the energy. So that's really nice as well. And, Colin, I'm curious as well that obviously in your past you've been a martial arts instructor. I'm still currently a Qigong teacher, so I'm at the very soft end of what you used to do. But I'd like to know as well how that has kind of informed and contributed towards the work you've done. And also you've done some assessment training with Dr. Vizriak as well. And I'm curious to know a little bit more about that, because that's not something I've come across before.
All right, okay. So the martial arts stuff, yeah, I'd done that since I was a teenager. When I went off to university, as you do, you join a club. So it was Taekwondo at the time. It morphed over that time into sort of what became mixed martial arts. So by the time I graduated, I had got my first degree, black belt, and then I became an instructor for them. So probably from about 99 to 2004, I was teaching. I retired from it. That was 20 years ago. That's quite scary. It was quite full on. So we would quite often get injured. So I retired from it because I was getting broken knuckles and fractured teeth. I think I dislocated my jaw, tore my bicep tendon. So it was affecting my work, basically. You can't turn up on a Monday with black eyes for work. So I retired from that, but that was my introduction to teaching, basically, and I loved it. I did love teaching, and it's a bit like Bowen, where you teach on module 1, you take a group of people, some of them have never done hands-on work before, and they come back from module 2 and they're like, oh, I've done this, I've treated my granny and she can now bend down, and they're getting amazing results. And it's kind of the same when I used to run like a kids club in an area in Glasgow, quite a sort of deprived area in Glasgow, and to see the growth in those kids and the change in them, the fact that they were doing better at school, the parents saw a change in their attitude. And it's funny because last year I think I bumped into one of the kids' mums, and she recognised me, and they used to call me Mr. Murray, and she's like, oh, hi, Mr. Murray. And I remembered her daughter, she was called Gillian, and I said, oh, how's she doing? And she's like, oh, she's she's still working in the health industry. She's gone. I can't remember exactly what she's doing, but she said that's from her love of what she did. She trained with you for years, and she, as a child, she got through to her black belt, and it was amazing to see that growth. So yeah, that was great. And I think that's where my love of teaching came from, and I think it's why Joe and I do what we do. We just love teaching. We don't have to teach. We wouldn't have to do this. We both have busy lives and lots of other things we could be doing, but we have a passion for teaching, and we have a passion for Bowen because it has changed our lives, and we've seen the influence on so many other people. Dr. Nick Wisniak, is a Canadian chap. He's written a huge number of books on assessment techniques, physical medicine, botanical medicine. Very, very knowledgeable person. And my brother, who's an osteopath, as I mentioned, was going out to train with him. He'd been invited out to train with him. So I just kind of tagged along. I went along, but it's fascinating work that he does. And he's very well known. And his books are sold into the osteopathic colleges, the chiropractic colleges, etc. over here. So yeah, he's well known. It was interesting. He was quite interested in Bowen as well because of the sort of holistic view. And I think maybe in this country we don't have that holistic view in a lot of our therapies. But when you go abroad, Australia, their physios are very good. The stuff that Dr. Wisniak teaches, it's all about that holistic whole body view. It's not just about you've got a sore shoulder, let's look at your shoulder. They're very interested in what's going on, right back to your diet, your nutrition, etc., all of that. So it was fascinating, very, very good.
And do you feel that that's informed your approach into Bowen as well, or certainly had an influence at that time that you did that training with him? Did it change things for you within your practice?
A little bit, looking at some stuff, but I've come from a sports therapy background as well, so I tend to do quite a lot of assessment stuff anyway. So, yeah. And it's something that we're bringing in a bit more. A bit later on, we're running in specific modules. We're introducing post-qualification training. One of the things that I think is quite good that I learnt from it was the self-reflection stuff that isn't really taught in Bowen because our training's quite short. So we're bringing that into the post-qualification training where looking back at some of your cases and saying, right, could I have done something better? And it's just looking back at yourself. And I think it's quite an important process for therapists to do. So that's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's certainly one of the things to have some kind of self-reflective, some kind of awareness of our own journey. And it's one of the reasons why, for me, Qigong is such an important practice, because it gives us actually an internal focus. So we get to actually observe ourselves within movement, within different planes, within different states, and just notice where we are. So, and two of the big classes I teach are always after clinical days. So I actually get to have a look at the impact on my body of what I've done in that day and reset and re-regulate it right in kind of real time. So really good stuff. And I guess with that martial arts background as well within your teaching, those classes are ordered and well behaved. Is that right? Are they? You get them saluting and you're looking after them?
That's Joe. I hear my students, I tell them that Joe's very strict and very mean, and that they have to stand up when she walks into the class, not to have any eye contact and stuff. And it's quite funny because, and then they meet her and they realise that I'm correct.
So kind. So Joe, tell us a little bit as well about the fascia Bowen. Again, it's one of these things that's been on my radar for a number of years, and as you know, I think it is with all of us, trying to match that time up for our CPD, for our continued development, it is always an interesting challenge. But tell us a little bit about how fascia Bowen adds into the kind of the basic structure of Bowen technique.
I think it's really useful. The fascia Bowen is working more with a gentle pressure. So where your traditional Bowen moves have got skin slack, a pressure, and then a rolling move, they tend to go across the muscle tissue fibres, whereas the fascia Bowen moves are more like the skin slack pressure, and you're trying to create a stretch of the tissues, so it's going to affect the fascia beneath the skin. You're creating a stretch, and it goes along the fibres, the muscle fibres. And what we find with fascia Bowen is that it's particularly good for elderly people and people with chronic pain, disabilities, because what we don't tend to get with it is that you probably know yourself, if you've got somebody with chronic pain, you do too much work on them, it can make them really, their symptoms worse for a few days afterwards. And if someone's in a lot of pain, the last thing you want to do is create more pain. So actually with fascia Bowen, you can work on them and not get that big sort of increase in pain afterwards. So it reduces the chances of you doing too much work on them. It's much gentler on the body. And we're working on the dermatome lines as well. So it's these gentle moves. And what you see with that, so the dermatome lines are sort of the way in which the embryo develops. And when you start to follow those lines, making these gentle fascia Bowen moves, you'll see the whole body begin to really relax, even more than it would with a Bowen session. So if you've got somebody who's really stressed, and there's a lot of clients who are very, very stressed at the moment, and their physical symptoms may be a result of the fact that they are holding in all of this stress, it allows that to just, sort of relax, really. They'll just sort of relax into the therapy couch and be more open to other Bowen moves. So you can mix this with your traditional Bowen work as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Love that. So, obviously now you're the directors and lead tutors of the College of Bowen Studies there. Tell me a little bit about, because it's been, so I qualified in 2011, so that's been a lovely 13 years since I finished that kind of initial training. Tell me about the journey of students in Bowen Technique as we are here in 2024. What's the kind of the path that they're going to go through in their initial training?
Do you want to that, Joe, or do you want me to answer that one? The path that they take from the very start. So with the College of Bowen Studies, what we call the core training to practitioner level is done over 5 modules, and each module is 3 days long. It takes sort of 9 to 10 months, or it can take 9 to 10 months. People can extend that out if they wish. And that's one of the reasons that I was attracted to it, was the length of time it took. So our latest intake of students started sort of end of February, start of March this year, and they'll be qualified sort of by the sort of first week in December, which is fantastic. And it's sort of like building blocks, really. We start them out very simply. Some of them have never done hands-on work before. So we don't introduce a lot of theory at the start. It's more a case of we teach them the moves, they practice those moves, and they come back and we refine all that work. And that's what it is. It's teach, practice, refine. There's a lot of practice and a lot of emphasis on them to go away and do case studies and practice. You have to with a hands-on technique. What we have now is we've just built or spent the last 6 months building a student portal, which the new students are absolutely loving. So all the theory and all the videos and all the resources are online for them now, which is we've never ever had before. As Joe mentioned, we've rewritten all the manuals. So the manuals are now quick reference guides. They're very simple to follow, very step by step. And yeah, and the students are loving them, and the sort of student teachers that we've got shadowing us are looking at them going, no, these are fantastic. They're a lot clearer, a lot easier to follow. And I think it's come from us asking our students for feedback and listening to that feedback over the years. And it's been really useful when we've had people who are teachers in other therapies or teachers. We've had a lot of teachers from colleges and schools. So I think that's brilliant. I go to them and say, right, well, give me your feedback. What would you prefer? What do you like? So you listen to that. There's no point in a top-down approach and going, I think this is what's best. You listen to the people who are using the resources and trying to learn, the people who are neurodivergent or who have some learning issues. I mean, Joe and I have taught people who have been blind. One of my students just now is from Hong Kong. He's only been in Scotland a few months. I'm not the easiest person to understand at the best of times. So he's not really following what I'm saying, so we're doing a lot of hands-on work with him, and the other students are really helping. So it's kind of how we make that learning process inclusive for everyone. So we're putting a lot of effort into that. But yeah, the core training is over the 5 modules, and then that's you a certified practitioner. After that, we have module 6, which is our post-qualification training, and people are going to come back maybe after a year, and it's a case of looking about how this works in real life. Some of the issues they might be having, some of the questions they have from being in practice. And then you've got all the continuing professional development work, which is an area that Joe's been working really hard on the past year. And I don't think we've ever had anything like it before, certainly not in the college. We've now got a massive amount of collaboration. So we've got teachers from other schools, from other areas, and we're bringing it all together. So our primary goal as a college is to produce world-class therapists. And that's, as we were discussing at the start of this, looking about where the future of complementary therapies are and where it's going to go. So I think we need the best qualified, best taught students we can possibly have, and that means bringing in people from experts from other areas.
I mean, and that's something that I think is really evident when you look at the CBS College of Bowen Studies website. Is actually the CPD course list now is enormous. And when I think about, when I was training initially and what was available and what we could get hold of, and also just trying to get hold of that information, and obviously organisations such as the BTPA, Bowen Association, and so on, we're all working to try and promote Bowen, but you guys are really upping that ante there as well, and making the portal really kind of accessible for people to get into, which again, I think in our modern age where we've got e-learning as an industry that's, especially over the last 4 years, just grown exponentially, it's about time that within Bowen we were also working at those kind of levels as well. So I'm curious from both of you as well, because obviously being the tutors that you are, hopefully we're going to have a lot of potential students and also students checking out your interview. But I'm curious what you both think is one of the most difficult concepts within Bowen to grasp. What is it that you maybe personally struggled with initially, or what is it that you've seen the students kind of coming up against, and have you been able to kind of make it? I mean, obviously the rewrites within the manuals and the representation of the work is going to be part of how you've been adjusting that. But Joe, tell me a little bit first of all about what you feel has been some of the really kind of complicated stuff for people to grasp.
The most complicated thing for people to grasp, and as a Bowen therapist who's qualified now, you forget how difficult it is to learn the Bowen move. Literally, you've got a room full of students, and we always have a maximum of 12 students per tutor, because they need as much hands-on time as possible, particularly on that module 1. We can take up to lunchtime just learning the Bowen move. Just getting the idea of skin slack, being able to palpate the body to understand, particularly if people don't have any previous experience of working on bodies, to be able to palpate the body and understand what you're feeling underneath your hands, to understand where the edge of the erector spinae muscle is, and to be able to make that move rolling without sliding over the skin is an art in itself, and it can take some time to master just that before you even go on to doing the rest of the moves. But the lovely thing is the fact that we've created these videos now that are only available to new students on the portal, so that when they finish their time with us, they can go home, they can have all of the theory online, and also the videos. So if there's something where they just, historically, you would look in the manual and go, I can't remember where I'm supposed to be standing. And people would come in on module 2, they'd be all over the place. You know, they couldn't remember where they were supposed to be standing, where they were supposed to be sitting, which direction they were supposed to be facing. Whereas now it's really, really clear. Having that available is absolutely priceless. And also what we do now that has never been done before is they have access to the tutors on WhatsApp. So literally I will get messages from people saying, I've got somebody on the therapy couch. What do I do? And, you know, they've got that support from us all the time. They're never alone. Through the whole process, we're supporting them and beyond. We still get messages from people who qualified years ago, and they'll come up with something and they're just like, right, I've never had this before, really don't know what to do about this, can you help me? So, you know, it's not just a case of we get you in, we take your money and you're on your own. It's like we will support you and guide you and encourage you through the whole process of learning beyond your qualification. And the CPDs that are out there, you know, these are other individuals and like-minded organisations that want to collaborate with us, that have that same passion for getting people to be the best they possibly can be. Because ultimately, you know, people 30 years on, a lot of people still haven't heard of Bowen, but everyone knows what Reiki is.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not dismissing Reiki at all. Every therapy is brilliant, you know, in its own capacity. It's amazing. But the fact that so many people still haven't heard of Bowen means that something needs to change. And I know Colin would agree with me, as Colin and I have taken a bigger role in CBS. What we're seeing is the whole type of person who wants to learn Bowen is changing. We're getting a whole different market now. It used to be a lot of people who this was kind of their semi-retirement plan, is to learn Bowen. Whereas now we're getting people fresh out of university, fresh out of college. People are looking at Bowen now as a career choice. And so it's been taken really seriously. And people who then want to go on and do research in Bowen, people who want to go on and do studies in Bowen, people who want to go on and teach Bowen. So it's changing hugely. And this is literally just in the last 5 or 6 years, like massive changes. And that's before we introduced the new website, the new materials, the portal, the videos and the support. It's going to be big. You know, we're feeling really, really passionate and enthusiastic about where Bowen is going now.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to have these resources available. I think one of the funny things as well, maybe over the last kind of 15 years or so, with the advent of mobile phones and mobile recording technology, is that I found in so many classes, you'd end up as something is being done, there's like 20 phones trying to get in onto some kind of detail so you could capture it. So to actually have some of those really key elements now available to the students inside that portal so that they don't have to do that, so they can just pay attention to what's happening and be present in the room, I think is essential. And to have more career orientated younger people as well coming through for that. I mean, Colin and I were just chatting before the call that one of the students that was with him this weekend was somebody that was actually treated by me at a festival in Scotland last year, and inspired them to want to learn more about Bowen. And that's exactly what we want. We want this kind of inspired, motivated collective of people coming through and seeing this as a magical thing. But Colin, I'm curious as well, is there anything else you want to add into Joe's statements there on the hardest concepts? Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
I think she's absolutely right. The first module, we almost step back a bit. We try not to overload the students, and I think perhaps that had been happening before. They were getting maybe too much theory, etc. You have to remember, and I say this to my students at the start, I say module 1 is the hardest module. If you can get through module 1, you're going to be fine. Because not only are you learning a completely new concept, and some people have never put their hands on people before. I've got a student at the weekend, she's a building surveyor. She's never put her hands on a stranger before. So just getting over that. It was an issue for her, but also we're getting a lot more therapists coming through and learning about Bowen because they're hearing about it, especially therapists, sports therapists, reflexologists, people their hands are starting to hurt after 10 years or 15 years, and they're looking to extend their careers, and they've had a Bowen treatment or they've heard about it. And one of the issues they have is that the pressure. We have to try and get them to really back off with the pressure. But that comes down to, it's a very hands-on teaching style that we have. So when we're working on them, they can feel the pressure. Sometimes we get them to work on us. And I encourage the students to give each other feedback all the time. And the best students are the ones that are giving the feedback. They'll go, no, that's not quite in the right place. That's a little too hard. Back off, do this, do that. And the group I've got just now are fantastic for that. Excuse me. They're all working really, really well together, and it's fantastic. But just getting them through that module 1. The other thing is the fact that some of them have never had a Bowen treatment, so they're learning and they're having the work done on them. And as you know, that can have quite an effect on you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm quite impressed that there are people that come along to train in a therapy and they've never tried it. I mean, it was all the way back in 2001 when I first started in my kinesiology training, literally first module, and I had a terrible bad back, and there was a lady on there who was a Bowen therapist, and on one of the lunch breaks, she said, hop on a couch and I'll do a bit of Bowen on you. And I'm like, never heard of the thing before. Let's see what it does. And got off, stood up, and in my mind I went, have I just started training in the wrong therapy? And it took me nearly 10 years before I could then find the space to kind of come back in and train in Bowen, and had regular treatments throughout that. So, it's interesting that people are ready to step into that just on some of the reports of it and the way that we're now presenting Bowen as well. So that's really interesting and important stuff. But I'm kind of curious. Sorry, Colin, go on.
I think one of the useful things we've introduced are the one-day workshops that we do. So it's like an introduction to Bowen. They used to be run as family and friends one-day workshops. So someone who didn't want to do the full training, but maybe they had a family member who had asthma or were maybe disabled or had a condition that they needed regular Bowen, but they didn't want to bring them to see a therapist. So that's what they started as, but then they kind of get hijacked by people wanting to train in Bowen and see what it was about. So we changed the entire format, and they're very popular now. People come on that. It's almost like they think it's a prerequisite, to be honest. So people who maybe have had no hands-on therapy before, and also people that are just curious. I've had osteopaths, chiropractors, all sorts of people coming on the one-day workshop going, what is this Bowen thing that I'm hearing about? And they're blown away with it. They really are. And we have a very high conversion rate from the one-day workshop onto the actual training.
Fabulous, love that. So I'm curious for both of you as well, what has changed in the way that you practice over time? What stuff have you dropped that you used to kind of hold on to? And is there anything that you've kind of added in and embraced that for a while you resisted within your practice as well? So Joe, are you happy to jump in and give us some feedback on that?
I don't know, really. I think the thing for me really was the way that we work in our clinics is very different to how we teach. So going from being a therapist for forever into a teaching environment was really, really tough, because what you'd find is that you'd be demonstrating something and someone would ask you a question and you'd slip into how you work in your clinic rather than, and then they'd be on it like a shot, like, well, what was that? What have you just done? And you'd be, oh. So I had to actually go back in my clinic to doing what I do when I'm teaching so that I didn't get messed up with the whole thing. And it's only in sort of fairly recent years that I've started to be able to reintegrate some of the other things that I do as well. But yeah, I mean, I haven't really dropped anything, if I'm being honest, because I think everything has a place. Yeah. I use kind of all of the, I'm not one of the people that will go on lots and lots of CPD courses. I like to go on a CPD course and then use it and use it and use it to really understand what it can do. I think sometimes people fall into the habit of training and then feeling that they have to go on all of the CPD courses really quickly in succession. And I think the problem with that is you'll only remember certain bits from each of those. You're not going to remember everything that you learn in every CPD course. So you're not really getting full value for money. And you haven't really given it opportunity to understand what happens when you use that and what effect that's going to have on your client. I think you need to be able to use that and become familiar with it and confident with it. A little bit like driving, when you can do it without having to think about it and you understand the value of that, then go on and do your next CPD course.
Yeah, beautiful. How about for you, Colin?
Yeah, I don't know if I've dropped anything. I think if anything, it's probably maybe almost the opposite. I think being a teacher and going right back to the basics and appreciating the core work. I see it on CPD courses where people kind of fly through, depends who you train with, some call it basic relaxation moves, some people call it 1, 2, 3. They sort of fire through that work to get to what they think is the real work. But I've probably gone back a bit and I spend a huge amount of time really, and I try to get my students to this, really refining that work and spending a lot more time there and using it as an assessment tool. The sort of, because it's a full body treatment. I mean, what we teach people at module 1, the first day, there's 34, 33 moves in it. But because you're working through the whole body, that tells you so much about that body. If you spend a little bit longer on every single move, it's what is that feeding back to you? You're working left, you're working right. There's a lot of observation, and I tie that back to what the person has told me, what their main presenting conditions is. I know their medical history, I know what they do for a job, and I'm constantly trying to work stuff out. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and some of the pieces are in the wrong places, and it's like, how do I take that out? What order do I put them back in? So if anything, I think teaching has given me an appreciation for how profound the work is. And when you're teaching and people present their first set of case studies and you think they've only learnt a handful of procedures and they're getting ridiculous results. You know, oh, Mrs. Smith's been seeing a physio for 6 months. Her shoulder hasn't got any better. Little me, I've trained for 3 days and I've gone and done this core work. And you know what? Her shoulder impingement has gone. She can, and what that then means for her. You know, she has, more independence back, whatever it might mean for that person. So yeah, I think it's going back and really understanding how profound the work is. It's given me a better appreciation. Otherwise, yeah, because I was one of those ones that was often I studied with everyone and did everything, and it's kind of, you don't want to be, what does it say, a master of all, what was it, a jack of all trades and a master of none. You're better to really focus, I think. Yeah, I think that's why we're getting people back into to do the post-qualification training as well. It's about that refining, constantly refining stuff.
Yeah, I think I found for myself as well that's been the case, that going back into those initial moves and really paying attention to what feedback you're getting under your hands is critical. Yeah, go on, Joe. What were you going to say there as well?
No, I was just going to say the same thing, really. Just when people qualify at module 5, it's like learning to drive. You're not brilliant at what you're doing. You're, competent enough to carry out a treatment, but we really need people to come back because, for example, like I say, I was a therapist for years and years before I started training as a teacher. And it was only when I came back to train as a teacher and really explored what we were doing that I realised that some of the stuff that I'd qualified at module 5 and that I'd been using for years, actually I wasn't in the right place. So, doing those ladybirds and making sure that you get over levator scapula and you get that little kind of crunch as you go over it. The glute move, if you're not quite in the right place, or latissimus dorsi, you're too far up under the armpit, or you're, not quite in the right place, you're not getting the best out of that move. So, even if you qualified and you think, oh yeah, I don't need to do that, I've done that, you really haven't. You need to come back because you will have fallen into bad habits. You will be almost certainly in the wrong place for some of the moves. And, we can make what you're doing even better.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. So for both of you, what do you wish that somebody had taught you when you started that has been essential into your practice?
That's a tough one. I think what was missing back, so I was quite fortunate because I came from a management background and I had always, I don't know if I've ever had a proper job outside of being a student. I've always set up and ran companies, and I've set them up from scratch and ran them. That's kind of what I do. So I think for me, it wasn't a problem becoming a therapist. I already had a multidisciplinary therapy clinic. But I think what was missing was that step for people coming out from maybe a full-time job they don't like to becoming self-employed. Some people think they just need to set up a Facebook page or a website and they're suddenly going to be busy. So we're introducing CPD on marketing, and we're putting together stuff on how to set up a business, basically how to write a business plan, the importance of that, who your target market is, how to write adverts for them, etc. And how to sell yourself. It's a kind of British thing. I think we're not particularly good at selling ourselves, about going out there and saying, I'm really good at this, come and see me, and closing that sale, if you like, and telling your clients to come back as well. Clients are often looking for that sort of guidance. So that whole business side of it didn't really exist before. So we've been doing it a bit better over the past few years, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot more students who are becoming full-time, busy, successful therapists, which is happening more and more. People always say to me, why do you teach on your doorstep? You're creating competition for yourself. And you're like, no, I'm not. I don't believe in competition. I believe in collaboration. The more good therapists that are out there, the more people hear about it, and then that spreads. It's like if one horse can pull 1 ton, 2 horses can pull 3 tons. So if you're the only person in a town talking about Bowen, not many people will hear about it. If there's 10 of you talking about it, you're all going to be busy. And that's what we're finding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, I think the other thing that we've got that's coming in very soon, she'll appear on the CPD page shortly, is an incredible life coach. And she is going to be working with Bowen therapists so that they can understand how to come from their full-time job into being a full-time Bowen therapist, and she will actually help them to make that transition. And this is a very experienced, highly qualified coach that's going to be on there. So watch out for her appearing. She's called Sharon. She's going to be on the CPD page shortly. But yeah, we've got marketing courses appearing on there. We've got all kinds of things. But The other thing that was missing is the safeguarding element. We didn't have the safeguarding in place, and we didn't have a code of ethics in place. And these are things that we know are fundamental for medical professionals to take us seriously. And they haven't been there. We now have those in place, and people can download that code of ethics and the safeguarding stuff and have it on their websites with a logo. A really decent red flags course as well. We've had this created for us by a medical professional specifically for Bowen therapists, and that is on there. There is a fee for that, but it's not a huge amount. You get posters that you can then print out and put up in your clinic. So even if you've done a tick box red flag course in the past, you will benefit from this. There's a logo that you can put on your marketing materials so that people can see that you've completed this red flags course. So we've got a lot of things now in place that have never been in place before. Because as Colin said right at the beginning, our aim is to make Bowen therapy the go-to therapy for the public. And we really need to understand what hasn't worked in the past, what we need to do differently, and to make sure that we get those things put in place. So this is why we've got the brand new website, the new marketing materials. This is why we've got the portal with all the new manuals and the new theory. And, we've gone into far more detail in theory because people have got that they can read in their own time, rather than it all being sort of thrown at them during the 3 days that they're learning with us. So we've had the opportunity to completely rethink everything that we do as a college and to rebuild it and create something absolutely extraordinary that's never existed before. And we're really excited about it. It's I think it's really going to revolutionize how Bowen is taught, how Bowen is received, and how Bowen is perceived by the public.
Fabulous. I really think it deserves that bringing into a modern age in a different way. And, I certainly think, having had my own multidisciplinary clinic in Shropshire for almost 11 years now, that one of the hardest things, so after getting the Bowen move right, I think one of the hardest things we learn is actually to be good at business in this, because we spend so much time and energy training in the actual therapy itself, but to be a business of that is a completely different animal. And if that's not something you have experience in, depending on the sectors you've come from, if you've always been employed, it's a very, very different outcome for us when we start being in business and having to be successful at business if we're going to really transmit what we're doing throughout the people around us. And I'm really with you, Colin, on the fact that we can have so many practitioners in a discipline and an area, and it actually just improves things for us, because as a GP you never worry about how many other GPs are in an area. And if we think about the fact that one GP surgery may have 5 or 6 GPs in the one surgery, and there might be 5 or 6 GP surgeries within a moderate sized town, there's absolutely no lack in people who really benefit from the support that Bowen Technique can offer. And so, and the more that we collaborate, the more that we champion each other and work together, the better we get, which again is why we love being able to talk to you today, and why the BTPA are again continuing working with you to support and encourage Bowen Technique growing throughout the country and the world here. And again, just as a little thumbs up as well, the safeguarding, I got to enjoy a pilot of that, and it was really, really useful stuff to do. And again, I don't think enough therapists have enough experience in those areas. They don't have enough training, and I think a lot of people have a lot of ideas and they think they understand it, but it's only when you really go through a training like that and you understand some of the statistics and some of the things you never would have thought about that you may have to consider, consider. And I think especially for myself being male as well, it has been really useful just to really clarify what is okay and what's suitable there. So I'm really glad that you guys are updating and upgrading how things are working there. So I'm curious, as we're kind of we've been going at this for a little while now as well. I'm curious what you think we should be exploring in bodywork that isn't getting enough attention, and where do you kind of see Bowen evolving over the next 10 years or so?
I think, as we all know, what's missing is the clinical research. And it's something that it's not really our job as a teaching college to do, but I think we need to become more involved and work closer with the associations. And I've had a discussion with people who do come from a research background, who have been part of some of the research, who have very good ties with universities. The problem is it comes down to funding. And that is, and the lack of research is a stick that is used to beat complementary therapies with around the world. It's like, you don't have the research. And we've kind of got to that point of, some people think, there isn't evidence-based research, therefore it means it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Type thing. And it's something that I'm not taking away from any other therapies at all, but it's something that physiotherapists in particular, because they do have a lot of research, because it is, you train at a university, they get the research grants, the students have to do research as part of their degree, so that therefore there is a lot of research. So it's something we have to look at, and whether that's an international collaboration, whatever it is, we need to sit down and go, let's get some really solid research. We know it works, we know it's effective, but we're not allowed to say that in our marketing and our advertising. We're not allowed to say, this can help with that, or we can't say it's an efficacy of such and such a percentage. So yeah, I think that's what's lacking, and hopefully that's something that we can all, again, it comes down to collaboration. If we can all pull together and work together, all the associations that exist in the different countries, and go, right, let's produce a piece of really solid, well done research. And I don't think that's far away. I think it's very doable. I think it's possible. And as soon as that's done and it's in a peer-reviewed journal, then we can make claims that so far we're not allowed to make.
And how about you, Joe? What do you think that we need to be exploring, and how do you see things evolving over the next 10 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of agreeing with Colin, really. I think, it's really about the research, it's about the studies. We really need to look at how to get Bowen out into the public domain more than it has been already. And I think that's probably the way to do it. But just to carry on doing what we're doing, having more therapists out there. We are getting a lot of interest in our courses. Our courses that are being booked now are pretty much full. Our spring intake is full. People are already starting to book into our next one. We have got a new group of teachers that are coming through as well. They're going to be undertaking training shortly. So we're expanding the college. We're going to be able to train more people. And like Colin was saying earlier, having more people talking about Bowen, or people who know someone that's had Bowen, is going to help us to get Bowen to where it needs to be in the future. And having these younger people coming through who are interested in doing research, that have time to do research, because it's a very time intensive thing to do. We have people that are really keen to learn Bowen, research Bowen, and go down that route. So I think ultimately, this is going to help us get to where we need to be.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and recently we have had quite a few primary healthcare providers train with us, GPs, vets, and people like that, who are wanting to promote it more, and trying to make kind of the NHS aware of it, and maybe not the NHS, but other GPs, people in that industry. And I think having proper research to back it up, because at the moment, I mean, I've got a former student who lives in one of the Scottish Islands, and the GPs want to refer to, but they have to they can't openly do it. Because they're blown away by the results she gets and the work she gets. And because it's a small community, they can see that. Literally, people are not coming back for repeat prescriptions and not coming back for their back pain. And they ask them what's going on, and they say, well, I go and see this woman for Bowen. So they actually invited her in to talk to the practice and say, what is it you do? They're interested. There is an interest there. But you do need the evidence-based work to back that up. And once we've got that, I think it will become more accepted. And I think that's key to Bowen becoming a sort of the go-to primary healthcare, primary therapy for people with musculoskeletal pain, to be honest.
Yeah, brilliant. I'd love to see that, and I'm looking forward. Thankfully, still young enough that I get to watch it develop over the next 20 years or so. So I'm really excited to see where it's going. And thank you, both of you, today for your time and your energy and sharing what is an incredible journey for us in Bowen Technique as well. So for anybody that's wanting to follow up on Colin and Joe's work, the College of Bowen Studies.co.uk is their website, and you'll also find them as well on Facebook at CBS Bowen and on Instagram at cbs.bowen as well. So we'll put links for that into the video description today so that people will be able to find you nice and easy. And wishing you both a wonderful week and more good results with all those bodies that we see.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care.